What do oversized earth elementals, telekinetic ghouls, and turbo crit water elementals all have in common? If you guessed they all require a truly maddening amount of micromanagement in order to make them work, then you're absolutely right. But that's why I'm here. It's my job to answer questions about Baldur's Gate 3 that no sane person would ever waste their time trying to answer. Questions like, what happens when you give your summoned creatures some of the most powerful items in the game, like, say, the legendary staff Markoheshkir to your summoned cambion? In the final episode of my solo honor mode summoner run, we're going to find out. Shadowheart begins Act 3 by marching into Rivington, where she runs into some rich guy arguing with a refugee family that's squatting in his house. This seems like a great opportunity to test out a new summon.
Who's that Pokemon? It's
A disembodied floating longbow. Okay, not exactly. It's actually a Shadow Lantern Wraith, which you can summon from the Shadow Lantern crafted by Gale in Act 2. Although the Wraith itself is a decent summon, it's limited by the fact that you have to keep the lantern equipped as your weapon while you use it. Unless, of course, you give your lantern to your water elemental and make him carry it. I decided to give my Shadow a Titan String bow. Somehow it feels appropriate that the only thing you see in the inventory screen is a floating longbow. Besides that, I give the Shadow a copy of the appropriately named Ring of Shadows, which allows it to cast Pass Without Trace, so I can save my own concentration for the Darkness spell. Now, the Shadow has an excellent stealth bonus, +4 from Dexterity, +10 from the Aura, and Shadows even natively get an additional +3, for a total of +17, which is very good. And just like that, we've turned our Shadow into a top-tier stealth archer. Larian didn't prepare for lunatics like me, so they never bothered to give the Shadow a longbow animation. The Shadow can shoot almost as fast as you can click. Back in Rivington, my water elemental casts Guidance on the Shadow, Shadowheart makes some darkness, and Shadow Buddy gets shootin'. Oh shit, he's making a break for it. Now let's get Dimples Baxter. A critical fail on stealth pulls the Shadow into combat, but Shadows have a special passive that allows them to turn invisible when they move through darkness. This breaks the AI, which allows it to shoot and hide every turn, totally trivializing this encounter. Now, as powerful as that probably seems, if you take a quick glance at the Shadow's abilities, you might notice one very conspicuous absence. It doesn't have the ability to jump. This makes navigating the world with the Shadow a huge pain in the ass. Luckily, there's a workaround, the Bone Spike Boots. If you give your summons a copy of these bad boys, they'll get access to the Brutal Leap ability, which allows them to jump, and possibly knock enemies prone in a small radius at the spot they land. You can get these boots from a cave behind the beach fight in Rivington. I didn't record this, but unfortunately, there's a chain lightning trap on the way, which, as it turns out, is kind of hard to avoid without jumping. My Shadow exploded on the way to the very item that would have saved his life.
Ironic.
These boots will come up later, so here's a jumping water elemental as a demonstration. I want to get to level 12 as quickly as possible to get access to 6th level spells, so I decide to farm some XP by stealthily murdering the local constabulary. With at-will darkness from Shar's spear, getting stealth kills is almost comically easy. Sorry buddy, no witnesses. Couple more easy kills. Then take a detour through the lower city for some endgame gear. First, I sneak past Faerun's most irritating wizard and steal some fancy artifacts. Tiptoe over Ansur's corpse for the Helm of Baldurin. We'll come back for the dragon later, but for now the Helm gives us immunity to critical hits and to being stunned. Then I go impress some murder cultists, kill a golden elephant, literally bathe in blood, all to purchase 2 of the most powerful Act 3 items for Honor Mode. The Crater Flesh Gloves, one of the few DRS effects that works on Honor Mode, and the Ballist Armor, which applies vulnerability to piercing damage in a small AoE. It also looks pretty badass. Now that we're geared out, we just need to reach level 12 to complete our build.
Who's that Pokemon? It's
a really big Earth Elemental. Fun thing about the Earth Elemental is that he's large-sized, which means he becomes huge when you give him a Colossus elixir. Huge creatures will deal a ton of crushing damage when they jump on someone's head. Damn, how's that for a bonus action? Jumping doesn't break invisibility either, so you can keep the elemental hidden while he crushes people to death. He does have to make a stealth roll, but by using Pass Without Trace, I can give him a decent stealth modifier. Then, with a Potion of Flight, he can fly back up to the high ground and crush again. Okay, so admittedly, the pathing in this game makes this strategy difficult in practice. But when it works, it really works. You don't even need to jump from very high to deal some decent crush damage. Steel Watchers and Flaming Fists give some decent XP, so I spent some time farming them to try and speed up the leveling process. Might have smashed a civilian or two as well, just for fun. Admittedly, this is an inconsistent strategy. It's hard to get the positioning right. So eventually I resorted to more machine gun archery with my Shadow. Look at those one-handed snapshots he does. Absolute baller. It's seriously ridiculous how fast you can shoot with this guy in real-time mode. Eventually, killing fists gets me to level 12. With my 1-level Ranger dip, level 12 is when I get 6th level spell slots. The big ones for a summoner are Hero's Feast, an excellent party-wide buff for summons, and Planar Ally, which gives me access to 3 high-level summons that are all interesting in different ways. The first one I'm going to play around with is the Cambion. This hellish fellow can cast a version of the Scorching Ray spell at will. If you give him Markoheshkir, he can use the Flames of Wrath buff to add his +4 proficiency bonus to the damage of every single beam. I also gave him a copy of the Hat of Fire Acuity to give him Arcane Acuity on every single shot. This increases his accuracy on all subsequent beams, but it also increases his spell save DC, making him more likely to land his Fiendish Charm ability or the Draining Kiss follow-up attack. With her new summon in tow, Shadowheart is ready to confront Viconia.
I thought you might try to flee rather than face us.
Because I'm a Dark Justiciar, I'm easily able to convince the other Dark Justiciars to join my side. Hey look, an opportunity to finally use my level 1 domain spell. When combat finally breaks out, a quick glance at the turn queue is enough to see that this fight is heavily stacked in my favor. I just need to take care of Viconia herself. She has very weak constitution saves, so I tried disabling her with Crawler Mucus. Using an arrow of many targets shot at a speed potion to bypass Sanctuary, grab the potion's effect, then cast Spirit Guardians for another way to damage her through Sanctuary. There is plenty of darkness in this arena, so my Shadow can do some very easy hit and run attacks. And then most of the fight is just me sitting back and watching while Viconia's loyalists go toe-to-toe with my own Sharans. I still have Crawler Mucus on my bow, so I can spread it effectively with ranged Divine Strike. I've mentioned this before, but because Divine Strike is a DRS, it causes enemies to roll twice against conditioned poisons like Crawler Mucus. Notice how she has both the inoculated condition and the mucus condition. They have to pass the save twice to avoid getting paralyzed. This double roll property stacks with disadvantage, which makes Trickery Domain an excellent character for applying poisons. Now, Trickery Domain isn't the only domain with Divine Strike. The others are Death, Life, Nature, Tempest, and War, but the Death and War versions of Divine Strike are not a DRS, so they won't have this interaction with poisons. This means that Trickery Domain is one of only 4 subclasses with an at-will class ability that works this way. Anyways, back to the fight. Cambion tosses a fireball, which he can cast because of Markoheshkir, then drops a wall of fire at Viconia's feet, which she can't escape from because of paralysis. More Sharan infighting. Viconia is having the worst day of her life, also the last day.
Lady Shah guides me.
Let's see what she has to say for herself.
So, you think you have won?
I mean, yeah. With Viconia dead, it's time for Shadowheart's final trial. The big reveal of her personal story. Her parents are still alive, and Lady Shar wants her to kill them to prove her devotion. There's a brief moment of hesitation, but she has come this far. There's no turning back now. The deed is done, and Char's final gift to her newly christened Chosen is to take away the memory of her parents entirely. It's one of those moments in the game where you're like, damn, I really wasn't expecting the gut punch. Shadowheart finally has everything she's ever wanted, and she's not even burdened by the memory of the price that she had to pay to get it. While I'm here, I quickly hit up the Mirror of Loss for the permanent stat bonus. I end up picking Dexterity. If I were to do this run again, I would have specialized in Dexterity over Strength earlier. I picked Strength because I knew I'd be using Char's Spear, but if I replaced my Ranger level with a level of Monk, I could have used Dexterity for the Spear anyways. I took Ranger for the proficiencies, but since I'm a half-elf, those didn't end up mattering all that much anyways, since half-elves get Spear proficiency as a racial feature. Anyways, the build is now essentially complete. Time to find out what our summons can do when they have the best endgame gear.
Who's that Pokemon? It's
A whole flock of telekinetic ghouls. I've mentioned before that flying ghouls, like the water elemental, are very powerful with items because their casting stat is strength. So you can give them a strength elixir and DC boosting items like the Robe of the Weave to give them a very high spell save DC. Alongside that, I like to give them the Haraknir bracers so they can cast telekinesis once per short rest. And then a couple Shadow Blades as an alternative damage source. My plan is to assault Gortash's fortress with my cambion and ghouls, but the problem is, it's really freaking hard to move summons across gaps like this goddamned drawbridge. I have to manually fly them, one by one, climb these vines with all 3 ghouls, and my cambion, and my earth elemental, and the shadow can't even climb, so I have to give him a potion of flying. God, that took forever. Why do I do this to myself? For the challenge, I've decided to fight Gortash without taking care of the Steel Watcher Foundry first. I set up a little trap for the Steel Watchers with my ghouls. We're gonna juggle them around with telekinesis. And then yeet them to oblivion. The camera's really harshing my vibe here. The other Steel Watchers rush into action, and they too are telekinetically juggled and then defenestrated. It's honestly pretty relaxing. And kaboom. For Gortash, I first sneak behind him under cover of invisibility. Attack some items to build up Arcane Acuity with the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. Shoot a Darkness arrow next to him, then teleport inside with an arrow of Transposition. My goal here is to poison him with the 5th level spell Contagion. I select the Slimy Doom variant, which applies a debuff that causes the target to get stunned for 1 turn anytime they take damage at all. The thought here is that Gortash will get stun locked out of the fight while I take care of his goons. Contagion requires 3 saves to fully apply, so I debuff his saves a bit and then just wait. The enemies all run around stupidly for a moment, and Gortash finally gets the condition. Note that this also gives him disadvantage on Constitution saves. I unwittingly start combat by casting Darkness on top of him, then failing a stealth roll. I decide to start by trying to paralyze him with Crawler Mucus. With Divine Strike and Constitution disadvantage, he has to roll against a DC 4 times in order to avoid the condition. He does get paralyzed, but for reasons I don't fully understand, he never gets stunned from damage in this whole fight. If anybody knows why, I'd love to know. Is Slimy Doom bugged? Is Gortash immune to it or something? Anyways, Paralysis is a great setup for my cambion. With Markoheshkir and the Crater Flesh gloves, the triple crit Scorching Ray does more than 100 damage in a single action. This is enough to trigger his phase 2, which clears the paralysis, and since he isn't getting stunned, he's not actually blocked from acting. Annoying. Shadow enters the fray, then shoots a haste potion for Shart. I'm wearing the Stormy Clamor boots, so when I approach Gortash with Aura of Murder, he gets reverb and falls prone. Let's try paralyzing him again. Hell yeah. Wait, why did that do 0 damage? Oh, I'm stupid. He becomes immune to fire and force damage in phase 2. Whoops. Well, maybe the ghouls can do something. He's prone and paralyzed, so they can auto-crit him with their consume ability. The goons are surprised, and Gortash is paralyzed, so I get a whole free round. Drop a Guardian of Faith. I'm thinking maybe it can distract the Steel Watcher. Cambion focuses on the Banite since Gortash is immune to his damage. Pretty good for a summon. Guardian of Faith, so impactful. Ghoul casts Misty Step by means of the Disintegrating Nightwalker boots, then takes a Bite out of Crime, grabs a Haste Potion to do it again, more Ghoul munching, the Shadow gets in on the fun, and we're able to kill Gortash before he ever gets a chance to act. Guardian of Faith doesn't last long. But with Gortash out of the fight, the Banites aren't so hard to mop up. I decide to encourage the Watcher to attack Shadowheart rather than my rather fragile ghouls. Pick away at him with Morning Frost. Telekinesis keeps him at bay. Eventually, he blows up. My ghouls took some damage, and they can't get healed by ordinary means, but here's a fun trick. Just let them snack on your allies. Then, the snack can drink a potion, and it's almost like you fed the potion to the ghouls. Good as new. That's 2 Netherstones in the bag, only 1 more to go.
Who's that Pokemon? It's
A generic Githyanki man. Okay, that's kind of a lie. It's actually a diva disguised as a Githyanki. You can do this by giving him the mask of the shapeshifter and having him cast Disguise Self. But this isn't just a meme. It lets him get the special racial bonus of weapons like the Soulbreaker Greatsword. If you disguise him as a Githyanki first, he'll get the 1d4 psychic damage bonus of the weapon. The initiative bonus is also very nice since summons generally have bad initiative. I give the disguised diva the Hood of the Weave, the Robe of the Weave, and the Amulet of the Devout to increase his spell save DC, and finally the Bone Spike Boots so he can knock enemies prone very reliably with his high DC. The diva can cast Wrathful Smite at will, which applies Frightened. This combos very well with the boots because an enemy that can't move can't get up from prone, so the diva can now do a turn skip combo all by himself. I also fully outfit another pack of Flying Ghouls with a similar setup. I gave them the full Bone Spike set, including the Bone Spike Garb for DR2 and retaliation damage equal to their constitution, and the Bone Spike Helmet, which lets them use Menacing Attack once per turn. With the Bone Spike Boots, the ghouls can also do that same Frightened plus Prone combo. The DR2 of the chest piece combines nicely with the buff from the Abyss Beckoner gloves, worn by Shadowheart. This gives resistance to all damage except Psychic. The downside doesn't even matter because ghouls and divas are immune to the madness condition. Ghouls are immune to it entirely, and the diva is functionally immune because it has a high enough wisdom save that it literally cannot fail. With this squad, Shadowheart is going to break into hell and fight Raphael. The hardest part about the House of Hope is these giant flaming meatballs, and I realize with horror that they're completely immune to all the psychic damage gear that I've given my summons. 8 damage. Wow. Killing these things is a slow and painful process, but if I shoot them and shoot them again and again, they do eventually die. Raphael's lover Harlep gives a nice opportunity to test out my prone lock combo. Hello? Combining prone with frightened makes him skip his turn as expected. Then Shadowheart frees Hope and gets ready for the big fight. I give Hope a copy of Phalar Alluve and have her start singing to help with Raphael's very high armor class. Shadowheart does the same thing with the Shriek variant, and then we summon the Master of the House. God, I love this song. I open with a Haste Spore Grenade, great for summons. Carry Raphael so he's next to your gear, Then Gith Diva Bro knocks them both prone. Raphael's AC is so high that the Diva can't really hit him, so I decide to just disable your gear. I decide to just try to hit Raphael as well, forgetting that Wrathful Smite uses concentration, so I accidentally free your gear. I try to finish him off on turn 1, but can't quite manage it. Ooh, okay. Luckily, he didn't do too much damage. The cambions do manage to do quite a bit of damage on the first turn, especially to my ghouls, which are outside the range of the Abyss Beckoners right now. Hope can delete 2 of them in 1 turn thanks to the Haste Spore grenade. The ghouls can prone the cambions with Brutal Leap, setting them up for a nice little snack. And the Resonance Stone means their Shadow Blades deal a lot of damage. Raphael does get a turn here, but he pretty much just uses it to heal, so no big deal. I have the ghouls use Consume to try and keep their health up. I drink a Bloodlust Elixir, then finish off your gear. And then I decide to cast Fear, another domain spell that I've hardly used this run. Despite my relatively low wisdom, I hit 4 cambions. Between Resonance Stone and Phalar Eluve Shriek, I had pretty good odds. Then the Diva tries to disable Raphael, but just can't land a hit. Ghouls do insane opportunity attack damage with dual-wielded Shadow Blades. More ghoul snacks for healing. Ghouls have more luck frightening Raphael by means of menacing attack. 56 damage as well, very nice. Hope casts Bless to help with our accuracy problems. Decide to just have the Diva disable a cambion since he can't seem to hit Raph. The prone lock can only skip 1 turn at a time because it's a 2-turn prone, and you cannot prone a target that's already prone. So I Mind Blast Raph on the turn before he would stand up. Then the ghouls finally start ripping him apart. Diva focuses on pinning down the remaining cambions. Drop Mind Sanctuary for more AoE haste for my ghouls. Otto's Irresistible Dance for the next time he would normally stand up. Between Shadow Blade, Menacing Attack, and Resonance Stone, the ghouls deal a ton of damage to Raphael each round. And eventually we get the best of him and his minions. Time to return to Faerun. Since I already have these summons geared and ready, I'm going to take on Orin and the Ball Cult. Shadowheart flies ahead to reveal the hidden ballists, then knocks them from their little perch. They survive, but I've given Hammerhalf to my ghouls, which gives me a convenient, albeit cheesy, way to just kill them by flying. Like most strategies I've tried in this run, it's pretty tedious. However, it's a fantastic method for clearing unstoppable stacks from the ballists. At that point, finishing the trial is easy. Moving now to Orin. I fly up invisibly, then initiate with Create Water to get everybody wet. Oh shit, I completely forgot that she stole Gale.
Yes, very sad. Anyway.
With combat started, my ghouls fly up behind the action from stealth, and then they join the fight with Chain Lightning granted from the staff Markoheshkir. Chain Lightning is incredible for this fight because it bypasses Sanctuary. They can also cast Lightning Bolt, which is great for the same reason. Just an incredible opener to have on a summon. Look at that, 104 damage. And the other crazy thing about Chain Lightning is when you join combat with it, it won't eat your first action. So the ghouls still get another action on their first turn. I'm able to kill all but one of the chanters on the first turn, but I'm able to stop his chanting simply by knocking him prone. With that, the Boon of Ball drops out of combat without ever getting to act even once. I finally send in my Diva. He's able to lock down the Death's Head of Ball with the Prone plus Frightened combo. Shadowheart casts Spirit Guardians. Orin goes a little crazy when she finally gets to act, but it's nothing too dangerous. Ghouls munch on prone targets whenever they get the chance. And the Diva is even able to knock Orin prone, then lock her in place with Wrathful Smite. Wow. Ghouls are able to finish off the final ballists, leaving just Orin. I dropped a copy of Hammerhalf for one ghoul to pick up as an easy way to clear the rest of her unstoppable stacks, which leaves her vulnerable. She does get another turn, but isn't able to do anything too devastating with it. And just by continually knocking her prone and focusing on her as a group, we're eventually able to finish her off. Orin turns into a pile of yucky blood goop, and Shadowheart grabs the last MacGuffin stone. Make sure to pick up my Hammerhalfs before I leave. Don't want to leave anything important down here. On the way out, I get the sinking feeling that I've forgotten something. Oh shit, Gale. Well, apparently if you leave them there, they just die. Sorry, Gale, you will not be forgotten. Probably. Maybe. Who are we talking about again? The final boss fight before I head to the brain will be Ansur, and for this fight, I'm going to see just how far you can push the damage of summoned creatures in this game. As before, I've got 3 flying ghouls who will be outfitted with the telekinesis build from earlier. I've got a water elemental, more on him in a moment, and I've got a Djinn, which is one of the summons that you can choose with the planar ally spell. The Djinn will be my warding bond caster here because he is naturally immune to lightning damage. As for the water elemental, I'm going to be giving him a magic club. This works insanely well with the elemental's multi-attack because the club's damage bonus will be triggered 4 times. I've also given Rhapsody to all 3 ghouls and the water elemental. The Scarlet Remittance ability can give them +3 to attack, damage, and spell save DC, but they have to kill 3 enemies each to charge it up. Luckily, I can do that with Myrina's dead husband, Connor. When you resurrect him with Auntie Ethel's wand, he is hostile, which gives you an easy way to charge up Rhapsody before combat. I do this 3 times with each of the ghouls and the water elemental. If ever there was a time you thought this summoner strategy was not tedious, well, I hope this will finally disabuse you of that notion. Rhapsody will be especially strong with the water elemental because of the Scarlet Saturation ability. This consumes your remittance charges to turn your next hit into a crit, but the condition doesn't clear from unarmed throw and spell attacks. So with the water elemental's multi-attack, which is unarmed, it just grants 2 whole turns of guaranteed crits. Back at Ansur's lair, I pre-buff with Mirror Image, just in case, then start the fight. As with the Merkel fight, I begin by applying the Burning condition to him, then summon a Globe of Invulnerability from a scroll to protect my summons, pop a Haste Spore Grenade, open with 2 ice methods that have been given copies of Phalar Alluve, one for the Shriek ability, and the other for the Singing version. Water Elemental teleports in next, using his Winter's Breath ability, which applies the Brittle condition to burning enemies. Recall that the Brittle condition makes a target vulnerable to bludgeoning and thunder damage. Water Ellie spent his bonus action on that teleport, so he can't activate Scarlet Saturation just yet, so instead I just do a regular multi-attack. Each swing of the multi-attack triggers the Magic Club twice, once for the bludgeoning damage, once for the cold damage, for a total of 4 separate triggers. Next, the ghouls teleport in using Misty Step from the Disintegrating Nightwalker boots. Then Shadowheart drops the trident Nirulna on the ground, and the ghouls use telekinesis to toss it at Ansur. If you saw my last video, then you know that telekinesis counts as a throw in this game, so it triggers the thunder damage from Nirulna. Aura of Murder makes him vulnerable to piercing, and Brittle does vulnerability to thunder, so the whole hit does double damage. My strategy for the ghouls is to just spam Nirulna telekinesis like this for the whole fight. It's also an easy way to take care of the water myrmidons. Ansur uses his turn to fly away, and then immediately fly back and start gathering power. On Water Ellie's turn, it's time to activate our 2 turns of auto crit. Multi-attack does less damage here than I'd like, because Ansur has resistance to all damage while he's hoarding energy. This cancels out the vulnerability. But I do want to kill him ASAP, so I have the Water Elemental do a quick line of Terrazul for a quick slam attack. Ghouls keep throwing with their mines. Shadowheart gets him below 1 health, which triggers his next phase, in which he gains a bunch of temp HP. Rather than let him have an actual turn, I stun him with Mind Blast. Wait, did I really not already have that achievement? What am I, some kind of noob? Ansur is basically dead already, but I want to see what the Water Elemental can do. Holy shit. By my calculations, that is 211 damage from a single action with a summon. Very, very strong. Now all that's left is the end game. I head back underground and take the conveniently placed rowboat to the Morphic Pool, cast Spirit Guardians to quickly blow up a few brain puppies standing in my way. Approaching the brain's hiding place, I get a really bad headache and then use the Infinity Stones to attempt to dominate the brain. Wow, okay then, I'll take it. This obviously doesn't work, so me and John Balder teleport to safety.
This is not over.
Much to my annoyance, this triggers a forced long rest that deletes all of my summons. I'm so mad about this that I betray the Emperor out of spite.
We are done.
Nice try, but I already broke up with you first, so you can't break up with me. Orpheus, now free, immediately changes into a Mind Flayer. He's the perfect rebound boyfriend. Me and my new Illithid boy toy leave the Astral Prism, and then I do some quick summoning for the final battle. I just summon a Water Elemental and a Cambion, which will be plenty, and since I don't have access to my camp chest anymore, I just give them some basic equipment. I invisibly run past this fight because it isn't terribly interesting once you've done it once or twice. And now it's time for the Netherbrain. I will be opening with a Haste Spore Grenade yet again. It's just so good with summons. Then the Hasted Orpheus will spam the Fierce Perilous Stakes ability on my summons. This endgame ability is beyond broken. It grants a flat 15 psychic damage bonus to all damage and reduces crit threshold by 5. But even more crazily, it actually stacks, so you can apply it multiple times for additional damage and an even lower crit threshold. First, Shadowheart flies up to the Mind Flayer Arcanists to eat their reactions. This prevents them from using Counterspell. Then, the Water Elemental uses multi-attack on the dragon. Even with one critical miss, the other hit is enough to delete half of its health. A simple slam attack will finish it off. The Cambion bursts down the Emperor with ease. Notice that the bonus psychic damage is doubled by the Resonance Stone. And then he starts hitting the Arcanists. The Arcanists cast Magic Missile, which can be a bit threatening since Fierce Perilous Stakes does make my summons vulnerable to all damage. Water Elemental deletes an Arcanist. And with the Arcanists down, Orpheus opens the portal. He enters first and hits the brain to eat the slow effect on its reaction. Shadowheart enters next. Alright, let's see here. Wait, what? So apparently, when you enter the brain's mind, you lose access to your summons. I did not know this. My plan disrupted, I start panicking a bit, unsure of what to do. I didn't show this part, but Shadowheart is silenced because of the brain image thing that the Emperor summons. Eventually, I decide to just go all in and try to deal as much damage as possible this turn. With Aura of Murder, it's decent damage, but not enough. Next turn, it's immune to almost every single one of my damage types, including Psychic, because of Orpheus's attack. Luckily, I brought a Globe of Invulnerability scroll to wait things out for a bit. I have Orpheus spam Fierce Perilous Stakes on me during this time, so I'll be ready once the brain's immunities wear off. But then I stupidly forgot that I had used Terrazul, so now I'm actually lethargic. More Perilous Stakes, I guess. With 4 stacks of Fierce Perilous Stakes, I've got 60 bonus psychic damage, doubled by Resonance Stone, so pretty much anything I do will end the fight. Yeah, I think that was enough. The brain is finally defeated. It plummets into the bay, and Baldur's Gate is free. As for Shadowheart, her story concludes as the new Mother Superior of her very own Sharan Conclave. She has everything she ever wanted, and she still doesn't remember the price that she paid to get it. And as for me, I've learned that summons can be extremely powerful when you take the time to give them equipment. I've also learned that the cost of that power is it is really, really, really tedious. So tedious, in fact, that I'm going to need a long break from builds that require any micromanagement at all. My next run will have to be something stupid, easy, and totally brainless. I think I've got just the thing. But that will have to wait for another video.